It's time again to review another topic for Bio 1. This topic is going to be viruses. And so we are going to start out talking about what a virus is composed of and kind of how it works. So a virus is composed of a core of nucleic acid. If you remember, nucleic acid is DNA or RNA. And once you have that, on the inside, you are able to make up proteins. You're able to have that. You're able to have that template for the proteins. On the outside, so this is DNA or RNA. It's not both, which is different from other living things like us. For instance, we have both. They only have one or the other. On the outside is a protein coat called a capsid. That will allow some protection of the virus. The other thing that viruses have is sometimes they will have an envelope, which goes around the outside. Envelopes are found only in viruses that infect animal cells. So you have that only in viruses that attack, for instance, like our bodies. Now, you will use either one. They always need a host in order to replicate. They cannot do this on their own. And so this is the reason why scientists have said in the past that viruses are non-living. Okay. Well, now we have to talk about the life cycle. There are a couple different life cycles that are possible in viruses. The first one that we are going to discuss is called lytic. The lytic life cycle is really fast. It spreads really fast. You have a lot of symptoms right away. It's a lot more violent appearing. And so what happens is you have a virus, and I'm going to use a binal virus, which is one of the shapes that we'll talk about coming up here. And that virus has its genetic information in there, and it comes along and it finds a host cell. Once it does this, it injects that genetic information into the host cell, and it will begin to take over and start building new viruses. So what you have here is you have a lot of other little virus pieces that are being built. And then they are being put together. So you have all sorts of new little viruses. And then in the life cycle, we have what's called lysis. Lysis, remember, is to burst or to break, kind of like the lysosome will take and break things down or get rid of the waste from the cell. Lysis of the cell happens when it bursts, and it releases all the new little viruses, which will go on and infect other cells. And so this is the lytic cycle. In this, if you are experiencing symptoms right away, you usually have things like fever, sore throat, cough, sneezing, a lot of yuckiness, throwing up, lytic viruses. And it will usually happen between, fairly soon. 2 days, maybe 5 days, 7 days, somewhere in there. And so the lytic virus then has a lot of symptoms and it wants to get out there very quickly. So that is the lytic virus. The other type of life cycle that viruses have is called lysogenic. And lysogenic is a little bit more sneakier. This is less like a full-on attack and more like a spy that has infiltrated the other side. And so we have the lysogenic. I'm going to use the same binal virus because it's kind of fun and creepy at the same time. And this virus will sit on the cell. It'll inject its genetic information, but instead of taking over right away and moving in really fast, it's going to incorporate that genetic information into the host cell. Then what happens is the cell does what it normally does. It divides. If you remember, this process is called mitosis. So when it does this, we have two cells that are identical to each other, and to the parent cell, unless there was some kind of an issue with division. And they also have the viral DNA incorporated in their genome. So where this gets to be really bad is that these guys will continue to go through mitosis, and their offspring will go through mitosis, and their offspring will go through mitosis, until you have lots and lots of cells. Now, up to this point, the host doesn't really know that it's infected. It can go on spreading the disease, and it won't know that it's sick. However, then, at some point in the life cycle of this virus, something triggers it to go into the lytic cycle. So what happens is these cells that are made are going to be taken over by the host DNA, and they are going to build more viruses, and they are going to lyse and release them, and they infect other cells, and they keep going in the lytic cycle. At this point, the host becomes very, very sick. This kind of a virus can be evidenced in HIV/AIDS. You have HIV, you don't know you have it, you've spread it to lots of people, and then something happens and it goes into full-blown AIDS and you become very sick. You definitely know that you have something. A lytic virus would be like the common cold or Ebola, which can be very, very bad and very serious very quickly. Now, we also have to talk a little bit about the different types of shapes that viruses have. You will remember that if you do need a good visual guide, your textbook does have some really nice images of viruses that you can take a look at. But we do have some different shapes. One is polyhedral, and I'll draw these in a moment here. Another is binal. Okay, these two are actually pretty common. Then we have helical, and we have a filovirus. So polyhedral, it's like a polyhedron, like that. Binal is the one that I've been drawing. It looks kind of like a creepy sci-fi virus. Helical, it looks kind of like that, like a spring. And the filovirus looks something like that. So filoviruses are things like Ebola and the hantavirus. Polyhedral, those are things like HIV/AIDS. Binal, these guys are usually bacteriophages, so they're the ones that usually infect bacterial cells. We don't often deal with them too much. Another thing to keep in mind is that these are viruses, but we also talked a tiny bit about some particles that can cause issues. We're talking a non-viral thing. It's not a bacteria. These are called viroids and prions. Viroids or viroids, these are just a single strand of RNA. These are usually found with plants, plant illness. Prions, on the other hand, are a protein, and it doesn't have DNA or RNA. These are the things that cause animal illness. For instance, mad cow disease is caused by a prion, which is not a virus or a bacteria, but it is an infectious agent and can cause a lot of mayhem if you are familiar with that illness. The other type of virus that we talked about was called a retrovirus. Retroviruses, like HIV/AIDS, are viruses that contain RNA. Now, most of them have DNA. And remember I said they'll have either or, never both. Retroviruses are ones that contain only RNA, and they're a little bit more complex. In order to get their nucleic acid or their genetic information into the host, they have to have a whole nother enzyme and a whole nother process. This is called reverse transcriptase, this enzyme. And this enzyme will take the RNA from the virus and it'll change it over to DNA where it can incorporate itself into the host. I hope that this little review session has helped you. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me. Tweet my account. That's always the best way to get a hold of me right away. Or you can send an email.